Hey, what is up, guys? Today we're looking at r/Prorevenge, where an entitled Karen gets humiliated in front of her friends. Let's go! So this happened around Christmas last year. My grandparents immigrated to Canada from Italy in the 70s and opened up a restaurant. When they passed away, the restaurant went to my parents. Over the decades, they grew and expanded it. I've been working at the restaurant since I was 15. Over time, my parents got older and eventually retired, becoming snowbirds, going to Florida for the winters. They left the restaurant to me about a few years ago, but still retaining a small percentage ownership as an additional revenue stream, along with their savings and annuities. Soon as I gained control, I pretty much modernized the old place. Remodeled the restaurant, changed the logo, reached out to local and national papers to put out ads, invited food critics, bloggers, vloggers, etc. It was very slow at first, and I began to worry that the loan I took out to do all this was the biggest mistake I had ever done, and I ruined 3 generations of my family's business. But eventually it began to work, and a local semi-famous YouTuber featured us in one of his videos, and that was the catalyst for more people to come and review, and eventually we were seeing 5 times to 10 times the business we usually get, even if it's a Monday. We became a hotspot for major events, and it wasn't uncommon for a celebrity to come. On those nights, I even arranged for special high-profile chefs to visit and cook for our guests. Costs a fortune. So during the holidays, we were beyond packed. It got to the point where people would have to make reservations in July to get a table in December. This process took years to get where we are now. When it gets busy, I don't just sit in the back office, I'm on the floor doing whatever needed to be done. Even if that means I greet people, bussing tables, or even mopping the floors. Other nights, when we have high-profile guests or events, I'm in a blazer and am acting in charge though. On one night, a group of 6 women walk in. 5 of them look like they're still in their early 20s, and the head of the group looked like she was in her mid-20s. Best theory, she was one of the 4 other girls' older sister, or possibly an elder sorority sister to incoming college freshmen maybe. I was greeting at the door. As they were walking up, Queen Bee Karen was telling the baby Karens on how this place is awesome, food is amazing, and there might even be celebrities here. When she came up to me, she told me she needed a table for 6. I replied, "Of course, can I please get the name on the reservation?" She looked at me and said, "Oh, I didn't make one, but it's okay. The owner is a personal friend of mine. He said he always has 1 or 2 tables that he keeps open for special guests and said we can have one of those tonight." Now, generally, this is true of many high-profile restaurants, and lately I have been doing that as well, but I had no clue who this woman was, and she definitely never spoke to me about any of this. I did get she was trying to get in without a reservation, but she literally picked the worst person she could possibly talk to and try this. I told her, "I'm sorry, but we cannot seat anyone without a reservation, and as you can see, we don't have any seats available." I didn't want to go all out and say I'm the owner and we've never spoke before, so I never promised you a thing because I didn't want to embarrass her in front of the other girls she was with. At first. She then went on and said out loud to one of the other girls to take a picture of me. She will speak to the owner and make sure I'm either cleaning the toilet or fired by the end of the week. The other girls followed her lead, were like, "Yeah, kiss your minimum wage job goodbye." I'm not sure if they were in on it with her or they honestly thought she knew the owner. Queen Bee Karen then went on and said, "Look, you can just give us a table or I can make life very difficult for you. This is not worth losing your job." Constantly pointing, just trying to put me down, saying things like, "Obviously you aren't anyone here, because if you were, you would know who I am and never even try to tell me anything other than yes or of course." Constantly trying to belittle me and get that table. At this point, it was a long day for me, and the way I saw it, I had 3 options. 1, tell her I'm the owner and just call her out on all this. 2, give her the table and just let it be. 3, teach Queen Bee Karen and her little minions a lesson. I chose for option 3 for various reasons, including some personality flaws I'm aware that I have, but I like to think that it was at least 50% really wanting to teach her a lesson. I smiled at her, said, "Of course, ma'am, follow me please," and I gave her one of the 3 tables we keep open in case a celebrity comes in. Happens time to time. I told her I apologize for everything, she's right, it would be simpler to just give her the table. I also told her that the first 3 rounds of drinks would be complimentary. I sat them down and personally served them. As they were sitting down, I told them we do need one of your credit cards and IDs just to keep on file, and we'll give it back to you before you leave. Queen Karen gave me her cards and told the baby Karen minions that tonight was on her. I took their orders and got their free drinks and told them, due to how busy we are tonight, there might be a delay on the food. All the girls were thinking of and cared about were their free 3 rounds. They ordered their 3 rounds and still no food. They eventually called me and asked to check on it the whole time, giving me the world's most nasty attitude since even before they ordered. I told them I'll check on it, but also asked if they'd like any more drinks. They ordered 2 more rounds by the time appetizers arrived. At this point, they were all drunk, having done nothing but drink on an empty stomach most of the night and only having had salads after. As more food arrived, the more drinks are ordered. What these girls never realized was that they're at our VIP table, which alone costs a few thousand just to sit in, but I didn't charge them for that. What I did charge them for was for all the super expensive cocktails they had throughout the whole night, except for the first 3 rounds. In addition, the table they were sitting in, as mentioned, was VIP, so the menus were a bit different. For one, they don't say prices on them. Trade secret. And in addition, it had certain higher-end menu options such as white truffle, black caviar dishes, and specially imported West Coast oysters, among some other things. At one point in the night, I was honestly rethinking what I was doing and thought I might be going too far with these poor girls. They might not know any better, but some things reassured me throughout the night, such as one of the baby Karens asked me if I felt like my life was worthless since all I ever became was a waiter. Also, one of my other employees told me how much they were discussing how to fuck with me to the point that they could do this just whenever they wanted, and I will know to always give them a table. I also overheard them say, "He's cute, but I would never date a waiter like that. He's such a pushover." There were a bunch of comments like that the whole night, so I kept on with their life lesson. By the end of the night, each girl racked up a bill in the range of $500 to $600 per girl. When I handed Queen Karen the bill of $4,232.23, with tax and tip included, of course, I have never seen anyone sober up so quickly. She went from laughing and giggling with her friends to nearly in tears. She called me over instantly and asked if this was some kind of joke. I took the bill, looked it over and said, "Oh yes, I apologize, I'll get you the correct bill in a moment." Again, she felt a complete sense of relief, thinking she got someone else's bill, called me a fucking idiot, and went on to talk to her friends. To be fair, I did make a mistake. I did forget to count her 8th order of a dozen oysters that costs about $120 per order. So I gladly just went back and added it to the order. When I went back to give her the correct bill, she flipped out again, going crazy. I just asked if there was something on this bill that she didn't order. She and the girls, in shock, go over every single line of the bill, including the first few lines that show their original 3 rounds, which say complimentary. Then they took out their phones and line by line went over everything line by line for the 100th time, adding everything up. Extremely rattled, Queen Bee Karen simply said, "1 second, I need to use the washroom." Part of me thought that she might just pull a dine and dash and leave the baby Karens with the bill, but kinda low-key I did in a way remind her that we had her ID and credit card without making it obvious I thought she was going to run out on the bill. 10 minutes later, she comes back with new makeup, obviously she's been crying, and makes up a whole story on how the food was awful, the drinks were bad, and so on, demanding that as a bare minimum I should cut the bill in half, with the argument the baby Karens will chip in, even though she originally told them that the night would be on her. Then, as if a light bulb went off in her head, she again mentioned her relationship with the owner as if it were to give me an additional incentive to cut the bill in half. Holding back a grin at this point, I told her no. Just no, I can't change the bill. She whips out her phone and shows me a series of texts with someone called my restaurant's name owner, which pretty much I realized what she was doing in the bathroom, which just probably changed one of the other Karen minions' contact name, deleted the previous text to start this new script. I read them and then clicked on contact info and told her that's not the owner's cell phone number. Her reply was, "He has multiple phones for business and stuff. Of course you don't know all his numbers." I remember, wow, this girl thought of everything except I'm the actual owner. I told her, how about this? If we call him and he says that it's okay to take 50% off the bill, then I'll do it. Her reply was a yelling and screaming over the time where a few remaining customers all began to start looking, and I knew, okay, time to end this. I told her already in a less accommodating voice, "Cut the crap, little girl. You don't know the owner, you have never been here before, and if you keep yelling, I will call the police. Her demeanor changed, and she was trying to defend herself the best she could. My reply to her weak comebacks was, my grandparents founded this restaurant. My family has been running this place for generations. I've worked here almost my entire life. I am the one and only owner of this restaurant, and I've never once seen you, heard of you, and I definitely never made a stranger I don't know and have never met before tonight any promises. The mini Karens were just frozen and didn't even know how to react. Queen Bee Karen was in tears. I said, now I gave you the table you wanted, one of your specially reserved tables for high-end clients, which I didn't charge you for, and I gave you 3 rounds of free drinks. If you don't pay your bill, I will call the cops and hand them your ID. In tears, Queen Karen signed the bill, and the mini Karens took out their purses to give her whatever cash they had, which equaled to maybe a couple of hundred, with the promise to pay her back more. 2 days later, a man walks into my restaurant fuming and asks one of my bartenders to speak with me. I was in the back office for a bit working, so he waited a good half hour for me. He was Queen Bee Karen's father. She was with him too, keeping her head down. I took them both to my office, showed him highlights of the security cameras, which were especially good quality of audio because they were in the VIP, which we had to keep good records of because we've had other unrelated incidents before. So I showed him most of it, their comments, their orders, their everything. When all was said and done, he stormed out with her and was screaming at her the whole time they were walking away. Haven't seen or heard from either of them since, but the original bill I gave them, the one that didn't count the $120 oysters, is framed on my desk. Oh boy, that was some pro-revenge if I've ever seen one. Man, this is just a life lesson. Treat people with respect. You never know who's in charge, and you never know who knows someone at the top. Man, those girls definitely learned their lesson that day, and I bet you they're never gonna try and pull that again. Our next post comes from PJ Expat. I've been with my current employer for many, many years now. Even though I've quit, I've come back to them. My company also has an incentive. If an employee comes up with a way to do business better or changes something that has a net benefit to the company, they get a percentage of the increased revenue/profit. Over the years with this company, I have had several major impacts. Well, about a year ago, I was talking to a senior level manager, let's call him Bob, and Bob was telling me about how the company had been having an issue in recruitment and hiring of new talent for our sales division. Now, I had been in sales before and knew of the pitfalls our structure created and why senior reps would excel and junior reps would get crushed, and had a really good idea on our turnover challenges. Then one night, I had an idea on how to change the sales structure of our company, almost entirely which would still retain our senior reps, but also make it easier for younger, more junior reps to find success and stability by a result-reducing turnover. I spent a good amount of time designing this plan before I ever presented it to anyone, since this was Bob's area of expertise. After many revisions and bouncing it around in my head, I called Bob and I presented my idea to Bob. Bob liked it a lot. However, he had a few minor tweaks and he brought up concerns company executives would have. I tweaked the plan and came up with rebuttals to those objections and shared my plan with Bob. I did this several times. I would say though my plan stayed about 90% original. Bob had been with our company for decades at this point, and I've known him for my entire time, so I trusted Bob would be sure to credit me. Considering my name was all over my presentation I sent over to Bob, I expected Bob to share the love with me should there be any. I felt like I needed Bob as an ally to make my idea work, which is why I brought him in on my plan. I followed up with Bob and he basically made it seem like my idea was rejected, that the company was going to keep on doing what it's always done. Okay, fine, whatever shit happens, it's not my first time my idea has been rejected. Cue a few months later, and our new fiscal year is starting, and our CEO calls everyone to a company-wide meeting. As I sit down to watch, I witness our CEO praise Bob for coming up with a brilliant new sales structure, strategy, and compensation plan. It is my plan with my name removed. The CEO is gushing over how wonderful this idea is and how he thinks it will benefit us greatly. I'm fucking fuming pissed Bob stole my work, put his name on it, and took credit. He violated my trust and lied to me. He told me the company had rejected the idea, yet here I am watching my company implement my idea. I get on the phone with my VP and let loose. Now my VP, let's call him Tim, is a really good guy and I trust him. Tim is taken aback, says that right around the time I presented my plan to Bob, Bob started presenting to senior management and it was almost immediately considered a great idea. In fact, Bob knew the company was considering forcing him into retirement because they felt Bob was holding the company back and the company needed to make a change, and this idea saved Bob's job. Now, to give you an overview of how in-depth my plan was, completely restructured compensation plan, completely changed how we present ourselves to new potential hires, completely changed our sales training to be more focused on real-world realities, refined the sales order process to reduce workload and streamline, did all of that using current infrastructure. Each step included suggestions on how to implement the change. Bob oversaw all of this in his current role. I then asked if I could prove that it was my idea, that I had presented it to Bob, and so forth. Now, Bob and I had discussed this over email and Facebook Messenger and another chat app. I went through our emails, Facebook Messenger, and a chat app and took screenshots, created a PowerPoint, makes it so easy to present ideas, and sent it to my VP. 2 days later, my VP called and said I needed to go to a conference call with HR, my VP, and the CEO. In that meeting, we discussed the plan I'd created, the collaboration I had done with Bob, and my plan to implement it. Not only that I presented the research that I had done, which Bob did not have access to, and justified why my idea was a good idea. The CEO seemed impressed with what I had done and convinced that I was the true creator. I was then asked what I thought had happened, and I straight up accused Bob of stealing my idea and removing my name from it in an attempt to further his career. I was told they would be having a separate meeting with Bob, and after that, they would inform me of any future changes. A week later, my VP called me and asked me if I was offered the chance to implement my plan, would I be willing to do that? This was obviously a promotion, and I said yes, of course. 2 weeks later, I get a call from my VP telling me he's coming to my location to visit me. He also tells me I should make sure I look sharp and presentable. I tried to figure out why he was coming, but he wouldn't say. 2 days later, I come into the office, check my email. Now, all big retirements and resignations are announced company-wide. I see an email stating that Bob has retired. What I found strange is that the retirement date was effective immediately and that his replacement will be announced shortly. Generally, there's a time period for a takeover to happen, and the replacement is announced in the email, along with a brief overview of their qualifications. The time for my VP to show up comes, and in walks my VP and the CEO. We go out to lunch, and the CEO says, "PJ, I came to visit you because I always think it's best to give people major promotions the news in person, but I'd like to offer you the position of Director of Sales and Sales Recruitment and put you in charge of implementing your idea," to which I accepted naturally. Then I asked, "Is this why Bob, retired?" To which the CEO smiled and said, "After talking to you and talking to Bob and discussing it among senior management, it was decided that it was time for a change, time to inject new blood into our organization, and Bob really wanted to start his retirement, so it was best for everyone." I smiled and said thank you. I know perfectly well Bob intended on working until the day he died. Oh man, Bob, that was rough, wasn't it? So that's clear that Bob thought this new plan was going to cost him his job, but maybe if he had just told them in the first place that this wasn't his idea, they might have kept him along to help implement it. But no, he lied about it, said it was his own, and then they cut him out entirely. That just goes to show you, Bob, you get what's coming to you, man. You get what's coming to you. All right, that is it for today, guys. Did you enjoy these posts? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, this is Max, signing off.